Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ASME's A Day in the Life webinar series brought to you by Engineers for Engineers. I'm Aditya Sharma and your host for today's third and last of a series of 3 webinars that ASME brings to you this fall. Last month, we hosted a webinar with a mechanical engineer from Aerojet, and today we have an engineer from Tesla. So what's the purpose of this webinar? And what's a day in the life webinar series all about? You probably wondered at some point what a day in the life of a mechanical engineer working at companies like Boeing, Aerojet, or Tesla would be like. Now you have the chance to find out through this interactive webinar series. Here is how the webinar will work. In a minute or so, I will introduce our special guest speaker of today, but let me first tell you how this webinar will work. Starting with some housekeeping, all webinar participants are signed in listen mode only. So please type in any questions you might have in the dialog box on the webinar platform anytime during the webinar. All questions will be answered after the introduction of our guest speaker. In fact, the Q&A session will be an integral part of this webinar. You may ask any kind of questions, whether it's related to mechanical engineering field, the company, the industry, career-related question, or any question related to speaker's job or position. So for those who are not familiar with how YouTube Live works, this is where you can type in your questions on the right bottom side, right, where you can see enter your question. Simply type them in the chat box in your YouTube control panel as shown here. We'll probably get a lot of questions, so we'll do our best to answer as many as we can during this webinar. So let's get started and introduce you to our guest speaker. Please meet Mitchell Heinzman, a lead body design engineer at Tesla. Mitchell, you have the stage now. Please tell us your story.
Hey everyone, my name is Mitchell Heinzman. Super excited to be here today and talk with all of you. Thanks for the introduction, Aditya. I guess I got to do some of my own housekeeping first, just so I don't get in trouble with HR. The opinions expressed in this webinar are my own, not of Tesla's. Now that that's out of the way, I'll tell you a little bit about my history. My career journey all started with a valet experience in downtown Raleigh. This is where I really gained a passion for the automotive industry. Before, I probably couldn't have told you the difference between a Lexus and a Toyota, but every day going in, driving all these incredible cars, speaking with the other valets, I gained that passion and really drove me towards automotive when I was looking for internships. So the first internship I got was BMW. You're probably wondering, shit, how do I go from like a job like valet to an internship like BMW? I can't even get Blockbuster to respond to my online applications. And that's a problem I had as well. It's kind of a funny backstory. And I think it shows the importance of networking. So back in college, this was my sophomore first semester year, I went to a Super Bowl party and met some people there. And actually, one of the people I met there happened to be behind the stand at the BMW career fair I went to. And it was kind of funny because when I got there, there's about 10 minutes left in the career fair. I had to go right after a test. And the line was like far too long for me to even make it. And I was about to turn away and she waved me down. I got to skip the line. I talked to her. She went through my resume and kind of like asking me some basic questions. What are the things you're most proud of? And the first thing I did was highlight my GPA. And she was like, oh no, don't highlight that. They don't want to know about your GPA. They want to know like things you're passionate about, things that you do in your free time, how it could relate back to the industry. So after some coaching with her, I met with the hiring manager, was able to impress them well enough to get them to sign my resume. A few months passed and I didn't hear anything back. So I contacted that hiring manager. He had given me his business card. And he's like, oh man, all of the hiring's already been done. Something must have gotten messed up in our filing process and we missed your resume. Fortunately, there is another hiring manager that's still looking for 2 roles. I interviewed for those 2 roles and ended up getting one of them. Fortunately, actually, kind of a funny story there as well. I got feedback later on that it was one of his worst interviews. I think the moral of the story here is like we all have got to start somewhere, gain this experience so that you could end up getting these higher profile internships and jobs. So I gained a lot of experience at BMW working on engine and drivetrain analysis. Some people ask me why didn't you work at BMW full time after doing 3 internships there? I did a co-op program, and like reflecting back on my experience there, working in the South Carolina plant, that's where they build all of their SUVs. I noticed that there wasn't a ton of room for upward growth. There was basically the engineers I was working directly with, boss, and then like the senior director. And then a lot of the core engineering was done back at the headquarters in Germany. So in my next internship, I looked to be closer to the core engineering work. And that's when I started working at Caterpillar. When I got my internship there, I was put into finite element analysis. And I believe that the reason I got put into that is they saw test engineering on my background at BMW. And they're like, oh, the title for this job has test in it as well. But that ended up being an incredible experience for me. I got really deep into the fundamentals of engineering. And that was kind of what built up the knowledge base that I needed to pass in some like more difficult interviews. So after doing internships at Caterpillar, I took a full-time role there doing a rotational program at first. So I got experience in marketing, product support, design, and then went back into finite element analysis overall, spending about 3 years at Caterpillar, and then making my transition into Tesla at that time. The Tesla interview process is extremely long and pretty difficult. Sorry. It was about 15 interviews overall, spread over a couple months, and got through that. And first day I started, they're like, okay, you own all castings for design. And I was like, oh crap. Back when I was doing design at Caterpillar, I owned like a specific part, I only spent 4-month rotational program, so the amount of responsibility I could get was pretty small at the time. But this like really blew me away, and the amount of responsibility they were willing to give a new engineer. As I worked on castings that developed into all bumper systems, crush cans, and tow hitches for all products. And then after that, I took over sustained design, which I've been doing for the past year. So sustained design meaning like all the products in production. It was primarily Model S and Model X. I still had some parts on Model 3, but the entire product for S and X, speaking towards the body. And just 2 days ago, I actually got promoted into a management role, and I'm leading a new program. So that's where I am currently.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michelle, for your introduction. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so let's now begin the Q&A part of this webinar. And we have already started getting a lot of questions in our YouTube chat, live chat box. So let me ask you a question to get us started. So Michelle, what's your typical day as a mechanical engineer at Tesla like?
Yeah, sure. Typical day at Tesla is kind of hard to narrow down to one, but I'll give you a few different types of days, I guess. Tesla is still a really lean company, still like very startup mentality. And so you have to wear a lot of hats. So like take on a bunch of different kinds of roles, even in the design. Some days you might be doing quality, some days you might be doing testing. And there's also different phases of design. So like if I'm working on early stages of design, then for example, like I'm designing a shock tower cross member, which is the part that bridges the front suspension castings, specifically in Model S. Then I have to think through, okay, I'm doing a new design for this. Maybe I'm integrating some new components. I've got to think of the different load cases for that. So going back to your engineering fundamentals, I think about, okay, in this area, I'm resisting full body torsion. I've got load cases like pothole, which puts the beam into bending. And then I've got crash load cases as well. So I start thinking, how do I displace this material to maximize moment of inertia or polar moment of inertia, depending on the load case, to use the minimum amount of material to solve these load cases effectively. That would be like a design phase. A test phase, you may have to come up with like a test plan. Sometimes there's ones already set into place. Sometimes you start thinking of like due care or abuse cases. So you think about, how is the customer going to use this product? Falcon wing door, maybe somebody's doing pull-ups on the end of it when it's in full extension, which you shouldn't do, but it is designed for that. Or like a production phase, say a supplier forgot to put a weld nut on a part and that part's completely enclosed on the car. You have to come up with a repair method for solving this issue. So maybe you don't have to scrap that entire car because this one nut is missing. So there's a lot of different days at Tesla, but those are some ones I've seen a few times.
Awesome, perfect. So Mitchell, we have a question from Katie Heavens. Katie says, what do you enjoy the most about your job at Tesla?
Yeah, it'd be really hard to narrow it down to one thing. The people are absolutely incredible, working with some of the most talented engineers on the planet. I think what I enjoy the most is actually partially what you're experiencing here today. I love like talking about and sharing my experience at Tesla. I'm in California here, walking around on the street. A lot of people are really interested in what we're doing, and it's really cool to be part of a product that's, impacting the world in a positive way, and that people are excited about, and that I'm excited about to share that experience. So just being really aligned with the company's goals, and then also get to work on a product that's like truly incredible and inspiring. That's my favorite part.
Great, perfect. So the next question is, what do you find most challenging about your job?
Probably our timelines. I think we've got a pretty interesting reputation for how quickly we release products, and just being on the back end of some of those tweets and stuff that'll come out, and it's like, oh, this is coming out next year, and then we're just like, oh my gosh, like we've got to design this really quickly. Meeting those timelines while still achieving the engineering prowess that we like to have at Tesla is super challenging. Sometimes you only have like one or two iterations to get something right. And that can be stressful and definitely challenging on our engineers.
Perfect. So the next question, Michelle, that we have is, what would you say are most important programming languages to know if you want to be a successful mechanical engineer at Tesla?
Programming languages. Personally, I don't use too many programming languages. I do have some background in programming from a small startup I did in college, but I would say the ones we use the most at Tesla from a mechanical engineering side are probably Python. We've done some smaller projects where Python's used to like identify parts that have E-code, don't have E-code, or using augmented reality to locate our spot welds early on in production. We've got one engineer in particular on our team that's extremely talented at using that, combining it with an app and integrating that into our existing processes so we can sign off on RC vehicles, or like get these things started off early. So for me, what I've seen is Python's very useful.
Great, thank you. So Michelle, we have a next question from Becky Cohen. And this is a question which I'm also very curious about. So Becky asks, I'm a mechanical engineering student and will be in San Jose next week. How can I get a tour of Tesla?
Yes, that's a great question. So it all starts with knowing somebody at Tesla. All of our tours are like friends and family based. I believe if you purchase a vehicle as well, you have access to that. But there's not like a public facing tour opportunity that I'm aware of. Each Tesla employee has the ability to set up a tour for somebody like once a year. So if you know anybody at Tesla, reach out to them. Maybe they can get you a tour set up. Often our tours are backlogged 1 to 2 months. So definitely do that as soon as you can. But yeah, outside of knowing somebody internally or purchasing a vehicle, it's pretty difficult to get a tour there.
Okay. So the next question is from Christian Gomez. And Christian asks, what would you say are the most important CAD or CAE programs to know if you want to become a successful mechanical engineer at Tesla?
Yeah, I think it all just starts with learning your first one. So a lot of the skills that you gain just utilizing the software are transferable between programs. What I would do is maybe talk to some people in the industry that you're interested in. Often what you'll see is that industries tend to migrate towards the same programs for specific applications. So say you wanted to go into body design, most body design that I'm aware of is done in CATIA. We use both V5 and V6. So that's a great program to learn on. A lot of colleges, I believe, are still using SolidWorks, which nothing against SolidWorks. It's a great program. If you learn into that, you'll pick up CATIA very quickly. As far as CAE goes, there's a plethora of options, and I would say the same thing applies. I know we use ANSA for crash analysis, as well as a suite of other programs for different types of analysis. They all have their own benefits. So what I would do is like maybe think about in 5 years, what do I want my focus to be on? And if it's like this specific kind of analysis or this specific kind of design, do some Googling and you could probably find out what everybody in that industry is migrating towards.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. So our next question is from Arvind. And Arvind asks, since you work at Tesla, what makes you to be different from other engineers at other automobile companies, like some extra skills or anything else?
Yeah, I would be the first to tell you there's nothing like unique or special about me. I think everybody has the potential to become an engineer at Tesla or an engineer at Apple or any of the like very desirable companies. It's just putting in the time and having the passion to follow that dream and gain the knowledge and experience you need to get into those groups. The things that we look for that would maybe separate a Tesla engineer from just like any engineer coming out of college would be having a really strong background in the fundamentals of engineering. If I tell you that a part's going through a certain load case, you should be able to draw me the perfect, like if I give you a space claim, the perfect way to put the material to solve this very basic load case. Or like which material I should select based on Hooke's law, or the yield strength of it, or its ability to resist corrosion. So these things are often picked up on teams like Formula SAE. It's difficult to get that kind of experience just going through college classes. So internships and like the different clubs at school can help separate you from maybe going to like from one company to like another.
Perfect. I think this will be a great motivation booster for many attendees. Right. Okay, so the next question is from Katie Heavens. Katie says, what is, sorry, what does the interview process look like at Tesla?
For a full-time role, and it's probably varies slightly from group to group. It starts with a screening call with the HR person that's representing that group. And then you'll generally have a call with the hiring manager. These are like 30-minute quick calls, sometimes some technical questions, mostly looking at like behavioral based type stuff. For us, sometimes there's another screening call with another engineer on the team. And then after that, there's a take-home test. So that take-home test tests you on your fundamental of engineering. You'll get an email, you open it up, and you have 1 hour to complete it. So the timer starts as soon as you open it, and you have all of the internet to use to try to answer those questions. We will look at your test, see if your fundamentals are strong enough. And then after that, we bring you on site for an interview where you give like a 30-minute presentation on any project that you want. That presentation will be given to all of the people that you will proceed to be interviewed by, which can be around 7 people. So that's like a full day of interviewing. After that, sometimes you'll have a call with like a senior director or a vice president. And then after all those interviews, if you've passed all of these things, we put together like an interview packet that basically says, this is why you're an incredible candidate, why we need to hire you. And that interview packet goes to Elon, and he has to sign off on every engineer before they get hired. So he's still involved in the engineering hiring process.
Wow. That looks like a tough process. So, Mitchell, I'm also very curious to understand about interns hiring process.
Sure. Yeah. So for my team, it's kind of varied day to day. I wouldn't say there's anything official, but I've started posting opportunities on LinkedIn, and what it'll be is like a 30-minute interview with me where I'll do a Zoom meeting, share my screen, show you some stuff, and then ask you questions about what you see. That can often be pretty technical. If you do well in that, then you'll also interview with one of my colleagues, and then they'll ask maybe more behavioral based questions, or if I ask behavioral, they'll go more into technical. So it's usually 2 30-minute interviews, and from there we make our final decision.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Mitchell, our next question is from Adam Soloway. Adam asks, I would love to know what it's like working with Elon Musk, and what inspiration do you draw from him?
Yeah, great question. It's just as crazy as you could imagine. I remember one of the meetings we had with him. This was in the Fremont factory in California. We were in one of the conference rooms in the area we call Galaxy, and that's because all of the conference rooms there are named after galaxies. And you walk into the room, Elon's in there, and in the corner is the guy's freaking sleeping bag, because he's been sleeping in the factory the past couple of weeks. So the stories of Elon sleeping in factory, completely true. And in the meeting, he talks about, the direction of the company, the things we need to focus on that week specifically. I think one of the things that's really inspirational about Elon is, and that some CEOs maybe could improve on, are just like how well they communicate. I don't think anyone at Tesla is wondering what Elon is thinking. He is very open with the company, and it makes it easier to make decisions, knowing that you're following what somebody at the highest level of the company is wanting you to do. The other thing he's really good at is looking at future technology or future state, taking like this infinite mindset of, not like necessarily how do I increase profitability today, but how do I make the company profitable for years to come? And he'll challenge us to, drop everything we're doing, if it's following just traditional mindsets, and try to think from the beginning with engineering fundamentals, and really break the mold to overcome these challenges that people have faced many times, but maybe there are better ways to overcome them now that technology has progressed. So those 2 things in particular, I think, are inspiring about working with Elon.
And I must say, it must be a great learning experience for you. It's like once in a lifetime experience to work, to get that opportunity to work with him. Perfect.
For sure.
So our next question is from Margaret Hutchins, and Margaret asks, how much competition is there to get a job at Tesla?
There's a ton of competition. I think the most difficult part is just getting your foot in the door, though. So I think that's really where the networking aspect comes into play. So like finding people in the industry. One thing you'll notice once you start your career in a specific industry is the world shrinks rapidly. So as soon as you start working in automotive, like you'll find people that you know everywhere you go to, like a convention, somebody behind the stand you used to work with there. So surrounding yourself with people you want to be like, networking at local events, doing things like this is really what's going to separate you as a candidate. And I think, can you repeat the question? I feel like I got off track there, did you?
Yeah, no problem. So like Margot asked, how much competition is there to get a job at Tesla?
Yeah. So there's a ton of competition, and the way to kind of get your foot into the door is networking. And then once your foot's in the door, that's where the engineering fundamentals and the way answering the behavioral questions and stuff comes into play.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question is from Shashank. Shashank asks, what skills are expected to have to get an engineering job at Tesla?
Heavily dependent on the job and what level you're looking to come in at. We don't necessarily look directly for automotive experience, although that is a great plus. When I'm looking at resumes, I look for passion in just engineering in general. In your free time, are you like doing woodworking? Are you building race cars? If you're a student, are you involved in any of your clubs like Formula SAE, Hyperloop, Baja? For me, it was the engineering entrepreneurship program at NC State, working on engineering outside of school. So like you live and breathe engineering. And we look for, I think I've said it a few times, but it's definitely worth repeating, really strong engineering fundamentals. And you also have to be personable. Like if you'll need to be able to hold a conversation, talk about how you've overcome, difficult interactions in the past, and have a good idea of where you want to be in the future. So taking some time to think about where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, and then developing or really working towards those things. It's pretty difficult just to jump directly to Tesla without any work experience. And then it's really difficult to find the first job that you're going to get, either internship or your full-time career. But having where you want to be in game in mind can really help direct you into the type of work you should be doing to get yourself to that final state. So I think I would recommend to everybody that hasn't done this already to really think, what's my dream job? Or do I have a person in mind that's like, that's exactly what I want to be doing? Maybe talk with them and say, like, what did you do in your history to get you there?
That's a perfect advice, actually. Thank you so much, Mitchell. So we have got a couple of questions, and you have already answered them in bits of in different bits and pieces. But I think let's take it again. So we have a question from Miles, Ling, and Ishrar, and the question is, what can help a candidate stand out in application or interview process? Because you mentioned that there's a lot of competition in this job process.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to the resume side of things, almost every intern my group has hired has been involved in some kind of school club. So, and then another thing that I've joined in on some of our university recruiters. So one time I took a trip out to North Carolina from my the university I was a part of there, NC State, and we specifically went to each of the clubs that had kind of the experience we were looking for. And I guess just to dive a bit more into why these things are important, if you're involved in these clubs, you're applying your engineering to something like real. It's not just, you know, solving an equation or something on a test. You're taking that knowledge and applying it to something. And you're also given strict deadlines. So to meet competition, you've got to have your vehicle or whatever club you're involved in designed by a certain amount of time. So we want to see that you can work towards a timeline and you can apply what you've learned in college and high school to something real. So that's why we look for that. Other things we look for, you know, some people say GPA is really important. The way I see GPA is usually you need to have it at a certain point to like get into the door. There's usually companies will have like a cutoff of, you know, 3.2, 3.5. And if you're not at that range, they won't even look at your resume. So it is important, but it's not the most important thing. So make sure you highlight important things on your resume, like those Formula SE experience. So even put in your hobbies and stuff like that. Sometimes we're interested in what you do in your free time outside of these things. So work experience, experience with these clubs, those are the things that are going to separate you from other candidates.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have a next question from Prathamesh Patil. And Prathamesh asks, do you use artificial intelligence with sensor data to improve and iterate structural components?
So there is a technology called topology optimization. It's actually what I did my master's in at NC State. And I wouldn't say we use it a ton, but we have used it. So what that does is you can take like a space claim block, apply constraints and load cases to it, and it eats away at all the material that's not needed and leaves this perfect optimized structure. Which is like really incredible for cutting down on iterations. And you're probably thinking like, hey, Mitchell, you mentioned earlier that iterations is something you don't have time for. You should be using this on everything. The technology is not quite perfect yet for refining manufacturability. So it'll give you this really nice, cool organic shape, but actually building that into a casting or like a stamping or extrusion is really, really tough. So it gives you kind of just a frame of mind of where the material should be, and then you have to make it manufacturable. So that's part of the reason it's not used a ton right now, but I think the technology is getting better. They have things called planarity constraints now, where you can get it to form planes to kind of make a steel plate fabrication or, you know, any material. Where we do use some of the sensors and stuff on the car, we have all this great data as far as, you know, what happens to our vehicle fleet in the field. We have sensor arrays, cameras everywhere. We can take that information to figure out how, in real world safety, what load cases we see all the time. So there's load cases you have to pass to legally be able to sell a vehicle. There's load cases you have to pass to become like 5-star rated in insurance agencies. But there's also load cases that those miss. And we can look at this data and basically see, you know, the type of crashes our vehicles have been in and how we should be designing our product to meet those as well. So that's kind of where we use that.
Great. Thank you so much, Mitchell. So our next question is from Adam Soloway. And Adam asks, what is it like working with automation at Tesla? Are you using ABB robotic arms? And what make those systems so great?
Working with automation. So yeah, automation has been one of our strongest and one of our weakest things, I would say. So one of the problems with Model 3 production hell is when we started the program, we tried to go so heavy into automation that a lot of time was needed to iterate and get that automation to work perfectly. And we're lifting like soft objects and try to place them in very precise places with automation, which can be done, but takes a lot of trial and error and fine tuning, which we didn't have. So I think, automation is a great tool for certain applications, and but should be maybe implemented later on in a program. So start off like a little easier, especially in like a general assembly line where things are, a little bit harder to, set datums up for. The types of products that you're working with are a little harder to get that level of control over. And I'd say my experience with working with automation has just been more on the design side of things. I haven't worked with the robots directly, but a way to design for automation is to really think about how all of your parts come together, how you make room for the type of joining method you're going to use and the type of robotic material handler or whatever is being used to pick it up. And that comes into knowledge of like GD&T or FT&A, and an understanding of how your end customer of manufacturing has to take the product you're building and actually put it together. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. So the next question we have is from Mohammed Naved, and it's a very interesting question. So how many fields in which we can go in mechanical engineering, like manufacturing, design, or any other? So please explain that to us, and how to find that particular field for us.
How many fields? There's a lot of different fields you can get into, and often it's difficult in college to know which the perfect one is for you. So that's where like going into internships, getting into, it's really helpful to at least know like the industry you're interested in, but going into just a job there and then really looking around while you're working. So that's where I would say the rotational program was most valuable for me. I got to do all those different jobs for a few months, one of which was design, and I really loved design, and that's kind of how I knew that's what I wanted to do. Some research online, you can get placed into things that an algorithm may place you into, but it's really like actually trying to do the things, talking with people that are working in the programs and in those fields, and see if your interests and all align. What was the second part of the question again, Aditya?
Like how to identify which field is perfect for me, because as a mechanical engineer, you can go into 5 or 6 different roles, right? But right out of college, you're not sure, like which one should I choose?
Yeah. I think so maybe make a list of the ones you're interested in, and then talking with people in the industry that are working in those different fields to see what a day in the life is like. That I think what you're doing right now is a pretty good start. This is a great platform to learn what it's like to work into different roles and be able to ask questions directly. But you could go even outside of this on LinkedIn and try to reach out to people. Cold calling people doesn't work super well all the time. So if you can meet people more naturally, like ASME has local events that you can go to and network, those are great opportunities to meet people to ask the questions to get you an idea of what the perfect fit for you would be.
One more follow-up question I have, Mitchell, here is, so what are the titles of entry-level job positions? I think that will be very helpful for our attendees to know, because sometimes they don't know about a specific title and they miss on the open job opportunities.
Sure. So I know at least when I was starting, associate is generally an indication of like a entry-level job. So associate design engineer and body and white design is what you would apply for going right out of college. I had a few years of experience, so I applied to design, which is just the next step after associate. So another thing you can do, because not every organization calls these entry-level roles the exact same thing, is just click on the link as far as the job description, and it'll give you like, we are looking for 1 to 3 years of experience. We're looking for 10 years experience. That's when you'll really see and get an idea of what level of experience you should have applying to these roles. But I wouldn't limit yourself necessarily to what that says, because sometimes we'll find that somebody with 3 years of experience has really good experience and could even get into a role that requires 5 or 6.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the next question is from Margaret Hutchins, and Margaret asks, do you have more interdisciplinary skills even though you are a mechanical engineer?
I do have some, yeah. So interesting you asked this, because back when I was in high school, kind of thinking about what do I want to do in college and what do I want to do with my life, I was really thinking electrical engineering. That's what my father did, and I was really inspired by the work he had done. But as I got into that job with the valet work I did, I got more interested in mechanical engineering. Can you repeat the question again there, Aditya? I keep getting off track.
Yes, yes. So it's, do you have more interdisciplinary skills even though you are a mechanical engineer?
Yeah, so that passion for electrical engineering didn't go away. When I was doing my senior design project at NC State for my undergraduate degree, I went into the engineering entrepreneurship program. And in that program, we, instead of like doing a traditional route of your senior design, like working with a company and building some product in mechanical engineering, very specific, this allowed you to kind of do whatever you wanted and start like a small company while doing it. And I ended up going heavily into electrical engineering and software by developing a smart dog toy. So working with like an Arduino Yun, and then using Python and their local IDE to develop the code to get all of the sensors and stuff to read the way I wanted to, and then some very little app development to get that working with an app to play with your dog remotely. These experiences, while like, you know, could help separate you as a candidate, I don't think I use them a ton as far as like getting into the role that I'm in now. What they're really helpful for is when you start working with other teams, understanding their problems and stuff that they're trying to solve so you can design a better solution for them to integrate with, is really nice to have that interdisciplinary support. Some examples of that, and it really comes to home for me for body and white design, is how integrating with these other teams can be a challenge that you've got to overcome. So body and white is basically, for those that don't know, what the car's state is going into the e-coat and paint assembly minus closures. So closures being everything that's like on a hinge or movable. So it's the crash structure / spine of the vehicle. And what's kind of cool about that is basically every engineering system has to integrate back to that product at some point. So you're working with, you know, the HVAC guys, you're working with interior design, you're working with our studio down in LA, lighting, everybody. So to be able to build the right product to integrate with these teams, you really need to understand the constraints and stuff that they're working with. And that interdisciplinary experience can really help in that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the next question is from Andres Najera. And Andres asks, what do you want to be in 5 to 10 years from now? And I think this question will help our attendees understand where they can see their career in long term.
Sure. Yeah. So I generally keep a pretty detailed 5-10 year plan. I've just gotten to kind of where I wanted to be in 5 to 10 years when I graduated college, which is in a management type position, leading the development of a new and exciting product. So what are the next steps for me would be maybe more into like a senior manager or director style role, where I take on even more people under me and more product scope. I've got like a strong passion for entrepreneurship and just a business sense. I've got an Audible membership and listen to business books every day on my drive in and out of work. So just super interested in how businesses are run and how you can take that and develop it into these like international companies that really change and impact the world. I think one of the important things that you need to think about when you're developing your own 5 to 10 year experience is what route do you want to take? So there's really 2 routes that you can take in most fields. Is do you want to be like a technical role, the expert of whatever you're working on to the nth degree, like everything about it, or do you want to be more on a managerial role where you have those types of people under you and you're inspiring them and guiding them to what new technology and stuff need to develop into the product? And for me, I'm interested in the managerial side of things. I'm really passionate about working with people and getting the best out of them and inspiring them to do great things. And it's really great to see the hidden potential that everybody has. So yeah, for me, I think it's more towards continuing down the managerial path, but just going a bit further into gaining more scope. So that that's where more interdisciplinary experience will come into play for me, is if I end up getting some of these other teams under me.
That's great to know. Thank you. So Mitchell, we have next question from Daniel Mangu, and Daniel says, what is the interdepartmental communication like? How well do other departments such as marketing communicate with engineering about customer wants and needs?
Sure. It's funny you mentioned marketing because Tesla doesn't really have, I mean, we do have a marketing department, but it's certainly smaller than others. Our interdisciplinary communication, I would say, is very strong. In order to get our products out as fast as we do, we have to know the constraints of other groups, or you're going to end up releasing something, build it, and then it like won't mate to another part, or you won't have a satisfied end customer because 2 things aren't communicating well together. I think if any of you've like driven a Tesla, everything is just so fluid, so easy to use. Our infotainment system is like top notch, and then how that integrates in with the Airblade and how you can activate your autopilot features and all of that just with that screen and some turnstocks. You can't do that without incredible interdisciplinary communication. The way that kind of looks is good management. So linking the right people to talk at the right time. And some of that is, self-driven. So we've got really passionate engineers and they want to develop the best product. So even if like I'm not saying, hey, you're working on this thing, this guy's working on that, you should talk to each other, you'll just see them in a room talking to each other already. It's very important. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have a next question from Prathamesh Patil. It's a very funny question, actually, but a very important one. Do you hire professors or PhDs, or are they done for life?
No, they're definitely not done for life. I mean, if anybody's got strong experience in fundamentals of engineering, it's professors. Where I tend to see them at Tesla, we've got a group called Concept Structures, and those guys are kind of the wizards that kind of take a blank slate design and think about where exactly everything's going to end up for a new vehicle architecture, and applying CAE and some design methods and new technology, working with us and all the other teams to come up with, this is how much space claim I need to drive studio, to put surfaces in the right place and all of that. As you get into a PhD, you tend to like get really, really focused on a specific topic, and that can pigeonhole you some. So just make sure that specific topic is something that you're going to continue to be interested in. But certainly you can bridge away from that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question is from Paul Brooks, and Paul asks, I would like to hear your perspective on how you think Tesla become a trendsetter in the automobile and technology sectors. What is it about their approach to technology that made them stand out?
Yeah, I think we start with the end in mind. So you think about how you drive a traditional ICE vehicle today, driving down the road, you see your gas as well. You've got to go fill that up. Okay, then you think about the gas station. How does it continue to get gas? They've got these big tanker trucks going from one part of the country to another to refill it. It really seems really natural to use electricity because it's so democratized. Like I don't have gasoline running to my house. I don't have hydrogen running to my house, but I do have electricity. I just plug my car in at night and I never have to worry about filling it up. So that's just one example. Another example would be our infotainment system. How does the customer actually interact with our product? What frustrates me to no end when I get in a car and there's not a place to put my cell phone or charge it easily, or if I charge it, I have to put it like in the center console and then I can't see it. So just thinking about how the customer is using your product, we've got a charger that props it up right in front of you so you can continue to see it. But then we also have this world-class screen where you probably won't even use it. So yeah, really thinking about how your product's being used in game and thinking about things that the customer wants before they even know that they want them is important. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So our next question is from Jipeng Lau, and Jipeng asks, I'm more into CFD problems. So how CFD skills could help me find a position at Tesla?
Yeah, so CFD is an incredibly useful tool. There's two teams that come to mind immediately where that type of experience is useful. So developing like our HVAC system, so the internal cooling and heating of the vehicle, CFD is used for that. And also in our studios, our aerodynamics team there that's coming up with how to get that coefficient of drag really low and developing the A-class surfaces so that the vehicle has really great efficiency and we can get long range out of our batteries. CFD, we use that to help develop those shapes. So those two areas in particular, I think, was where in the automotive industry, at least, you would find that skill useful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So we are reaching top of the hour, so I'll take like one or two more questions before we wrap up. So our next question is from Mukesh Joshi, and Mukesh asks, what do you prefer between CAM or CAD?
CAM? Is that what you said?
It's CAM. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is.
I'm not sure I have ever worked with CAM, so I guess I prefer CAD. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. We can move to the next question. Next question is from Jacob Oblanzi, and Jacob has actually a follow-up on your previous answer. How do you discuss your entrepreneurial interest during interviews? And I think that's very challenging sometimes because employers see, oh, that this guy may leave a job in few years. So is it good to take this guy or not? So how do you see this?
Sure. Yeah, I think you have to take it and form it into a way that seems like a value add for that company. So I took it and used it as like I have a very innovative mindset. So using my entrepreneurship knowledge, thinking of the end customer, thinking of things that maybe don't exist. While I was at Caterpillar, I developed a few patents. One of those is public facing now, which is creating a quick disconnecting joystick. So that's where the customer can go into any construction equipment machine, pop off the joystick and put on their own custom one. And the useful part of that is that you think of what that customer uses day in, day out. 8 hours a day, they're going to be using this same joystick, but every construction equipment doesn't have the same work tool on it. You can swap out on a backhoe, like all different kinds of things. You can have a jackhammer on it. You can have a bucket and not all of the buttons and stuff are optimized for that load case. So you think about their comfort, their hand size, and also how they're using that tool on a seasonal basis. Having this custom solution to do that is really nice. So the way I framed it was more on along the lines of I can think about the industry and some of the problems they're having and maybe new creative ways of solving them.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. So although we have about 20 to 30 more questions left in our chat box, but I'll take one last question for this webinar. So what type of mentor system does Tesla have in place?
Mentor system, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so as many things with Tesla, a lot of it is, you seek out on your own. We do have like a mentorship program, and you can, I believe they have like meetings you go to and you like just fluidly interact with people. I think that could definitely be improved on, because sometimes when you're looking for a mentor, it can be really intimidating to just approach somebody and be like, hey, I want to take up some of your time and like gain some of your knowledge. So that can be intimidating. And I don't think you necessarily even need to go through those programs. It's like day to day when you're working with people, if you have somebody in mind that you like see as where you really would like to be, just talk to them. I had one of these conversations recently, actually, where I talked to somebody about, their history, how they got where they were. And more often than not, they're going to be flattered that you see them in that way and be willing to talk to you. So just take that step, reach out to them, and set up a meeting. As far as interns go, though, we do have a more formal mentor program where you have a manager and a mentor. So manager will keep track of your hours, stuff like that, but your mentor is day to day helping you learn and integrate with the team.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. We are now at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap up the event now. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, insights, and experience. It was very, very helpful. And I'm sure everyone on this webinar really enjoyed the conversation.
No problem at all. It's a pleasure to be here and speak with all of you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you all very much for your participation in today's webinar. This was our last webinar from our A Day in the Life webinar series. This webinar has been recorded and will be available online at www.asme.org in a few days. And lastly, in a few minutes, we'll send you a short survey. Please be so kind and give us your feedback so we can bring you speakers and topics that are of most interest to you in the future. Thank you again for your time and for your participation. Have a wonderful day ahead. Bye.